Representative Decker,
Present in the room.
Representative Elliott, Representative Fisher,
Present in the room.
Representative Heverin,
Present in the room.
Representative Kulkarni,
Present in the room.
Representative Lewis, Representative Maddox,
Present in the room.
Representative McCoy,
Here.
Representative Minter,
Present in the room.
Representative Mosier, Representative Nemus, Representative Petrie, Representative Scott,
Present.
Representative Stevenson, Representative Banta,
Present in the room.
Chairman Massey.
Here in the room. Thank you. We do have a quorum. Before we begin today, I'm going to ask for everybody's cooperation like I do at every meeting. Please have your phone on airplane mode. And the reason for that is because it interferes with the electronic system, and we have some people that try to connect via Zoom or other matters electronically, and we don't want to disturb that, and we don't want members to not have their votes recorded. So make sure you speak into the mic as well when you're addressing the presenters or casting a vote because of the sensitivity of the system. We have several things that we have two things actually. When I say several, we'll have several things from the Graves County folks. But with regards to today's agenda, we only have one other item for consideration, and that item is an act relating to the unauthorized practice of law. We're going to go ahead and dispense with that quickly, and the balance of the time will be saved for the people that are here, the judges, the clerk, the people that are here to discuss the impact of the recent disaster on Graves County's judicial system. So with that, I'm going to ask Representative Elliott to please take his seat, and we will proceed with the bill, which is House Bill 256, an act relating to the authorized practice of law. And Representative Elliott, you may proceed when ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to the committee. This piece of legislation would change the classification of the criminal penalty for the unauthorized practice of law. At present time, the unauthorized practice of law is a Class B misdemeanor for the first offense and any subsequent offense. This would alter that to make the first offense a Class A misdemeanor and any subsequent offense Class D felony. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
I don't have a question. We will have questions. I do have a comment, and then we'll start our questions. I will say that I've discussed this at length with the sponsor, as well as some other members of the committee. Realistically, I was thinking in how this would actually be impacted. It's possible that a person could get a misdemeanor on the first offense and be diverted, and then possibly get a misdemeanor offense again, and then go to felony, where they might also then be eligible for a felony diversion. I think the issue is we don't want people to continue acting out and practicing law without a license. It's happened a number of times. In fact, in my history, I know of some folks that were doing estate cases, appearing in court, etc., only to be queried. And when they were queried, they did not attend law school. They didn't have a license. They were just doing what they do, kind of like the book Catch Me If You Can. So that's the purpose of the bill. I was asked to see if we could get a draft. Representative Elliott was kind enough to sponsor it. With that, we will certainly take questions. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative, I'm just curious to know, because this obviously has been an issue, is there a reason why you're pushing for an increase in penalties at this point?
Well, I think the reason is that if someone has committed this offense, which I think that's what it is, obviously, and then they are persistent in continuing to commit the offense under our present statute, there is no increase available in the penalty. And so that the reason that I've done this is that I think that it's obviously someone who's done this over and over again needs to be appropriately punished in order to create a deterrent effect, I think would be my response. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems to me like 1 year in prison, 1 year in jail is enough of a penalty here. I think the courts can also take action, hold someone in contempt of court, and hold them indefinitely, or make some kind of an agreement. It seems to me like making we pass out felonies like they're candy around here, and it seems like we've got a number of statutes or a number of bills that are increasing felonies, increasing penalties again this year. What we need to look at the penal code in a holistic approach. We wrote it in the 1970s. I think we should look at it in a holistic approach. So I don't think this is necessary. Unlawful practice of law is an important thing, but should it be a felony? I don't think it should be. And so I'm going to vote no on this. I respect the position that you're taking, but it seems to me like a year in jail is a pretty significant penalty, and that's already on the books. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And if I might respond, Mr. Chairman, I
You may.
appreciate the constructive criticism. I agree with you that we do need to take a holistic general review of the code in its entirety, and I know you've worked hard to do that. You've made an effort to do that. It's hard, as you know, to pass things around here. Which is probably a good thing. But I understand the point that you're making. I think the only counter I would make to that is that the first offense is obviously a misdemeanor. Hopefully they don't ever do it again, would be my hope. And maybe the increase in penalty here that they could be looking at if they decide, well, I might try that again. I might try to be a lawyer again tomorrow, might deter it. So that would be my response. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Maddox.
Yes, Representative Elliott, in the context of individuals who are practicing without a license, I understand the intention of this bill, and I'm appreciative for it because it's easy to see how detrimental it could be. Are seeking justice and don't have someone that's properly credentialed to represent them. I've seen the impact of that in Northern Kentucky, but that said, my question is, does this also apply in circumstances where someone's license has been revoked and or is suspended, yet they perpetually continue to practice law?
That's a great question. It would obviously apply where the license has been, as you say, revoked, which is a disbarment in our world, in the legal world. In the instance where someone has a license that has been suspended, usually for a period of time, they're not permitted to practice law during that time of suspension, or the suspension would not be worthwhile or effective against the behavior. I think that this would apply, but I can see an argument where the person has not permanently lost their license, and there would be, I think, a judgment call for the prosecutor, whether that's a county attorney in the instance of a misdemeanor, or for subsequent offenses, a Commonwealth attorney who would prosecute felonies. So I think there would be some call from that individual as to whether or not to prosecute under this statute. So that's a great point.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Decker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative, for discussing this with me beforehand. And
Absolutely.
At that time, and now I still have a couple of questions.
Sure.
First of all, I don't know that we got a copy of the bill. I mean, I just have the front page that says there is a bill.
Okay.
Is there-
It's on the back.
It's very short.
Oh, there
It's
it
very
is.
short bill.
I'm sorry.
I think it's
all right.
13 lines, so it's very short.
So, can you tell me what is defined by the rule of the Supreme Court as engaging in the practice of law?
I cannot, and I probably could look that up on my phone. I would think just from it would be someone who you're saying what the Supreme Court rule is.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't see this on the back. So my question was,
Right.
what is
Well, we have
the
some
practice
members of the
law?
court here who might have that memorized.
That-
but
so my
if-
question
I might-
is,
I might-
how is
I
this
might-
defined? Is it an intent
I
to
would
practice?
think, I would think it would be. You're talking about how it's defined here. I think you would be holding yourself out as
Okay.
an attorney.
So it is an intentional holding oneself out.
That's how I would take
Right.
it. Yes.
And
that-
I'm sorry,
think
I
that's
can
the
look up
intent.
that rule, but
Yeah.
I want to make sure that it's not getting at someone who's helping their family, who doesn't
Right.
have a law degree, whom everyone knows doesn't, or a
Right.
friend, or
Right.
not, and everyone knows they're not a lawyer. And
Sure. Well, and I think it's important to keep in mind that, you know, we have elected prosecutors who have to
Who will
try
have
these
yes,
cases
that's right.
and so forth. And so I just can't foresee county attorneys,
Taking such
you know,
a case.
running into the kitchens and saying, well, grandma advised you to do X, Y, and Z,
Right.
so we're going to prosecute. I don't see that as a realistic scenario,
I-
but I
I
understand the
agree.
concern.
Thank you.
And as a point of chairman's privilege, I will also say that many of us that are in here this room are obviously practicing attorneys. We went through the hard work of going to undergrad, going to law school, holding ourselves out there, and we're supposed to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. And so therefore, somewhat it's denigrating to our profession if somebody is able to go out and just hold themselves out as a lawyer when they haven't paid the price, if you will. They haven't done the hard work to get to where lawyers are when they are licensed before the court. I often said jokingly when I first heard about this that, well, if I had known that it was just a misdemeanor and I was just going to get fined, I could have avoided law school altogether and the student loans that go with it. So that being said, I think it's something that we don't really see that there's going to be a rash of prosecutions for this. The idea is that if somebody does it, then they will think twice before they do it again. Even giving Representative Nemus's comments, I don't think on a first offense you're going to find very many of those folks doing any jail time. They're probably going to get diverted, get fined, and told you cannot do that. So with that, we do need a motion on the bill.
Motion on the bill.
Is there a second? Second. We have a motion on the bill by Representative Banta and a second by Representative Bratcher. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Representative Banta,
Yes.
Representative Blanton,
Aye.
Representative Bratcher,
Yes.
Representative Cantrell, Representative Decker,
Yes.
Representative Elliott,
Aye.
Representative Fisher,
Yes.
Representative Heverin,
Yes.
Representative Kulkarni,
Briefly explain my vote, Chairman. Can I?
We need your microphone, Representative.
Oh, it's on. Sorry. Can you hear me? Just briefly explain my vote. I'm going to vote yes on this bill. Typically, I agree with my colleague from Jefferson 33 that we don't need to keep adding felonies, but there is a scourge of unlawful practice of law in immigration specifically. And I have seen firsthand the personal, emotional, and financial devastation that occurs. So if this results in deterring even one person from continuing to practice hold themselves out as practicing law in that field, I think this is an important step. Thank you.
Representative Lewis, Representative Maddox,
Yes.
Representative McCoy,
Explain my vote, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
I just want to reiterate, I agree with these comments. Normally, I'm not for adding another felony, but here's some place that I think we need that deterrent, if you will. I don't really anticipate, and there is a impact statement that seems to indicate they don't, no one believes this is going to increase the jail population or the cost. But more importantly, my yes vote is for that nice looking suit and shirt. So thank you.
Representative Minter,
Briefly explain my vote. I share concerns about creating new felonies, but I'm also very persuaded by my colleague Representative Kulkarni's argument about how this type of fraudulent practice falls and who it falls on. So it's a yes for today.
Representative Mosier,
Yes.
Representative Nemus,
May I briefly explain, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm intrigued by Representative Kulkarni's comments. I'm still going to vote no. I think it's important that we look at it holistically. I would also note that this does not apply, clearly, does not apply to suspended attorneys. It says anybody without a license. A suspended attorney does have a license, so it does not impact people who've been suspended. It only impacts people who do not have a license. If an attorney has been disbarred, it would apply to them, but not one that's been suspended. And so I'm going to vote no in committee for the reasons I suggested. I'm going to talk to Representative Kulkarni because I certainly don't want an area of law like immigration to have a proliferation of this kind of clearly misbehavior. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll vote no.
Representative Petrie, Representative Scott,
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to vote no because I'm thinking about the people who can't afford attorneys. So for them, I'm voting no.
Representative Stevenson, Chairman Massey.
Yes. With there being 14 yes votes and 2 no votes, HB 256 is passed. Will be reported with favorable expression that the same should pass. So thank you, Representative Elliott. At this time, we're going to transition into what's going to be, I think, a very informed discussion, but certainly on the heels of a very tragic incident that happened in our state in Western Kentucky. I was prompted to this idea after having the privilege to make a trip down there and to tour Mayfield with Circuit Judge Kevin Bishop, with District Judge Deborah Crooks, with the clerk Emily Buzanis, I hope I said that correctly, with County Attorney John Cunningham, and with Sheriff John Hayden. Besides just seeing the devastation, we began to discuss how do you deal with this? How do you deal with a courthouse that no longer is functional? How do you deal with a jail that was destroyed? How do you deal with inmates that are being housed in counties outside the area when it comes to venue? How do you deal with a speedy trial request? How do you deal with all of those things that we as lawyers many times take for granted in those areas where we just get up and go to court each day and do our jobs? I've talked with them at length, and I asked them to come present. There are many things that we can learn out of tragedy. For instance, and I know that Sheriff Hayden will talk about this, I was appalled to learn that on one occasion they captured 6 people that among them had $122,000 in cash that they had looted from people's homes that were destroyed. And there's story after story of those kind of things. So I've asked them to come to present today to tell us what we might be able to do to help them. I know today on the floor we're going to hear House Bill 5. And if any of the folks that have made the journey here would like to hear that debate on the floor about relief for those affected by the tornadoes, then we certainly welcome you to attend. I know Representative Heath has been in touch with you, and I believe Senator Howell is also maybe reached out to some of you. So that will be later today following our meeting. With that, I'm going to ask the folks to come forward. You certainly may remove your mask for the presentation. I guess if Judge Bishop is going to take the lead, he can introduce all of his guests, or Representative Heath, and we'll like to hear from you about this. And I'm sure there will be some questions following.
Well, good afternoon, committee, and thank you for having us and having our folks from the flatlands of Western Kentucky to come up and give you some information. I'll start with the introductions. For the record, I'm Representative Richard Heath, representing District 2. To my right is our district judge, Deborah Crooks, and then our circuit judge, Kevin Bishop, our Graves County circuit clerk, Emily Buzanis, and our sheriff, John Hayden.
Learned committee, thank you. Thank you for inviting us up to address you. I want to thank all of you for your support for my fellow Graves Countyans. I want to especially thank you, Mr. Chairman, for coming down and touring the area with us. The photos you've seen on the media, the photos you'll see today do not do justice to the full impact that we're living on a day-to-day basis. Before I get started, I would ask you to join me in a moment of silence for those who lost their lives on December 10th, 2021 from the tragedy of this tornado. Thank you. On December 10, 2021, I went to work as normal. I arrived around 7:30 at the Graves County Courthouse. The court part where we practice in was constructed in 1888 through 1889. It was a Victorian style of structure. The original architect was H.P. McDonald and Brothers of Louisville, and the original contractor was M.T. Lumen and Company. This is what our courthouse looked like prior to the tornado. Sometime after midnight, I received a call about the extreme devastation to our courthouse, and when I arrived before 1 a.m., oops, wrong one. What happened here? Well, I've lost it. Oh, I know. My apologies. This is what my circuit courtroom looked like prior to the tornado. If you'll notice the flags in the background and the Great Seal of the Commonwealth of Kentucky hanging on the wall. I'll address that in a moment. But with a tornado coming through, the American flag and the great flag of Kentucky was thrown through the wall to the rubble of the floor. It was retrieved by 2 National Guardsmen and presented to me. Those flags will continue to serve in a position of honor in my new office once we are up and running. This is another picture of the courtroom with a bench. Justice Nickel, myself, my predecessor, Judge Timothy Stark, Court of Appeals Judge Chris McNeil, and Sheriff Hayden. I wanted to show you this, and I apologize. These are the only photos of my courtroom I have. It was a large bench. It was designed to accommodate 3 sitting Court of Appeals judges to hold court there, and that's why I wanted to show you that. At approximately 9:25 p.m. to 9:29 p.m., an EF4 tornado with a base from 1/2 mile to 1 mile wide destroyed almost everything in its path. Many lost their lives and many more lost everything else they owned. Currently, there are over 471 families that are displaced. 471 families. The tornado actually was in Graves County from 9:16 p.m. to 9:29 p.m. and continued on its destructive path on into Kentucky. When I arrived after midnight in downtown to get there, I had to drive. Representative Heath lives out past me. He knows what it was. You had to dodge down light poles, drive over live wires, miss trees. Debris was strewn everywhere. It was a challenge to get there, to say the least. But when I arrived, this is what our courthouse looked like. It looked like a war zone. The place where I practiced for over 34 years, utterly destroyed. While this was taking place, my wife, my 8-year-old granddaughter, with a bicycle helmet on, and as many pillows as we could put on top of her in the bathtub, in the smallest bathroom we had in our house. My daughter, our pets, we rode it out. We sat there with pillows and we prayed. We prayed for God's protection because there was nothing else you could do at that point. As suddenly as the noise came, it left and it was quiet. I got up, went outside with a light, went around our roof. The best I could tell, I knew I had a lot of shingles missing, but the roof looked intact for the most part. There was debris everywhere. There were trees down my driveway. I went back inside my house. No electricity, no water, no internet, and then my cell phone started ringing. My internet at my home, and I don't live that far out of Mayfield. My internet at my home was out from December 10th, 2021 until January 8th, 2022. After I was called and advised that if I wanted to try to save anything in my court chambers, I needed to get to the courthouse, I drove there. There were waterfalls coming through my ceiling. The drop ceiling, much like what you have here, were filling up with water and imploding. After I was hit about the third time on my shoulder, I decided I better get out of there. And I was able to save the 3 laptops myself and my staff used. I went home. When I left there, out of this courthouse, I walked over towards City Hall, which had been, all the windows had been blown out. There were electrical lines down. I walked around back to the fire department. All the windows there had been blown out. I remember a stray dog going through the broken window just to get inside shelter. When I got inside the fire department, there was Mayor Kathy Onan, Judge Executive Jesse Perry, and our own Richard Heath. Everyone was standing around trying to plan what to do next. This was just overwhelming to everyone. I went home about 3:30 a.m. that morning, came back Saturday morning about 9, and this is what I found my courthouse to look like. The clock tower, as you remember in the first slide, gone. That gaping hole in the middle was the law library in my circuit courtroom. This is the entrance to my circuit courtroom. The ceiling has now become the floor with about 12 feet of rubble. I put this one in here simply to let you know that in the center, you see that one dark piece of timber protruding upward. It has nails in it. You can see the nails sticking out. If you can't see it here, but if you look closely, and Representative Massey saw these, those nails are square-headed, hand-forged nails. Those are original nails from 1888. This is a memorial which was set up a few days later after a fencing went up. I want to personally thank Administrative Office of the Court's Regional Security Chief from my region, Jason Kirk, who not only contacted myself and others at this table after the tornado, he was there Saturday morning to help me and all of us at the courthouse, AOC offices. He was there day in and day after. He has helped lift more things that was not in his job description, nor was it in our job description, but we all worked together to do what we could. He has been a blessing and has taken risks necessary to save what could be saved. I want to personally thank Chief Justice Minton, AOC Director Lori Dungeon, AOC Executive Officer of Facilities Danny Rhodes, and many other AOC personnel who have came down to assist us. Chief Justice Minton and Lori and others and Danny came down on that Sunday and helped load up. On Sunday, we were still fairly dry. We had had water damage from the tornado, but there were a lot of areas that were salvageable. Somewhere between Sunday and Monday morning, and mind you, in another part of town, the water tower for Mayfield was pushed over and destroyed. So water was gone. But somewhere in the night, Sunday night, water got turned on. I got a call Monday morning as I was driving through the rubble heading to court that there was water in the basement that was at least knee-deep high. The basement is where we had 3 decades of files. Representative Massey came down with his father, Charlie, and Sheriff Hayden, and he met with all of us, but then Sheriff Hayden and I drove him around the courthouse and other parts of the counties. And as you heard him state earlier, he has heard some stories. As we were leaving that day out of the courthouse with Chairman Massey, in fact, that's his hand and phone and foot there, I believe, on that photo, Sheriff Hayden found the clock tower bell, And while this photo doesn't show it very well, it is stamped on there that it was built in 1889. I believe that's the original timber that they mounted it with. I've requested our judge executive to safeguard this valuable piece of history and display it in our temporary court facilities once we're up and running. And I would like it placed in the new court facility in the future once we have plans in place for that. Representative Massey asked me what the impact on the judicial system was. It was catastrophic, it was immediate, and it was a complete shutdown. I can only talk about the impact on Mayfield. As I'm fully aware, other parts of Kentucky were destroyed. I'm fully aware one of our own, District Judge Brian Crick, who served McLean County and Muhlenberg County, lost his life in this storm. Our hearts and prayers go out to him, his wife, his children, and his family. On Sunday, December 12, 2021, when Chief Justice Minton arrived, he had an order that he issued suspending the computation of time for legal matters, as our clerk here, Emily, was unable to receive anything to file. I issued an order to close circuit and district courts pending further orders of the court to preserve the rights of our citizens to have access to a system, because at that time our system was completely shut down. Things had to be done immediately, as the circuit courtroom was destroyed. The law library was destroyed. The circuit court chambers had massive water damage and loss of books and furniture. The district courtroom was destroyed. The district court chambers had massive water damage, and the floor was buckling. The circuit clerk's office had extensive water damage in the basement, had water damage on the main level, and all of the furniture was destroyed. 9 of the 11 law firms in Mayfield no longer have a building. Only 2 law firms were untouched, and they're both sole practitioners. So 82% of the law firms in Mayfield completely gone as far as building, files, everything. Our court system had to be shut down immediately. We could not function. Those lawyers could not function. From December 10th until our reopening on January 11th, only 20 business days have lapsed. We had holidays in there. Are we ready to hold jury trials now? No. Are we ready to accept pleadings, conduct arraignments, process civil cases, have domestic hearings, have hearings on termination of parental rights, adoptions, and many other types of hearings? The answer is yes. We do this through virtual court. Personally, I believe to be able to do this only 20 days after this horrific tragedy is beyond remarkable. What is needed as quickly as possible, and I'm asking your committee for assistance here, is the complete construction of our temporary court facilities. Judge Crooks and I are in adjacent offices in a shopping plaza. You have to imagine that after this horrific damage to the entire city and county, that rental property was at a premium. It's scarce. Representative Massey walked through our future temporary facility. She and I are through a paper-thin wall. When she's holding court, I can hear her. When I'm holding court, she can hear me. When I'm on the phone or she's on the phone, we can hear each other. We're doing the best we can, but we are moving forward. I respectfully ask you to provide the resources and the budget to assist us in constructing a temporary facility as quickly as possible. The entire staff of Graves County Courthouse deserve to be able to work in a facility where they don't have to worry about safety, where they don't have to worry about the roof leaking or the roof falling down on them. The cost of the construction is beyond my bailiwick. I deal with court. I don't deal with the budgets on those. I've been advised, and people from AOC can answer those questions. I've been advised it's $3 million minimum to get 2 courtrooms, a circuit clerk's office up, and the necessary minimum facilities for us to function. I will say AOC has a floor plan in place. They designed that in extremely short amount of time. They received input from all of us here. They were very accommodating, and I am just quite frankly blown away with the professionalism and speed by which they have developed a floor plan that is functional for us. We just need it constructed. Files that were taken, every file from the clerk's office was taken by ServPro, and those guys are rock stars, I will tell you. They went in there and carried out. They weighted water. They carried out wet files that were falling apart. All the wet files have been shipped to Detroit, Michigan for processing. It's beyond my comprehension, but they freeze them and then they go through a process to restore them. It's going to be months before we get those back, minimum of 3 months. So what can we do in the interim? We can't deal with all those cases because they're up there. We don't have a file to look at. What we can deal with are the new cases coming in. What we can deal with are the new arrests. We have indictments. We had grand jury on December 10th. Not all of those indictments got processed into the system, but we can move forward on what we can. We're taking steps. Everyone at this table would much rather prefer to be working at our desk and doing our jobs that we were elected to do than sitting back looking at an empty wall. So I ask you to fund the temporary facility immediately. As I said, I'm not a numbers guy, but I've been advised a minimum is going to be $3 million to get us up and running. And I think the timetable, if the funds are there, the contractor is ready to move forward as soon as possible. I wanted to go back to this Liberty Bell. In addition to the flags from my office that were knocked out of the circuit courtroom on the 2nd floor and found in the rubble on the ground floor by National Guardsmen, this bell needs to be up and running so we can be up and running for the betterment of our citizens. The motto of our Great Seal of Kentucky says, "United we stand, divided we fall." The seal on my courtroom is lost in the rubble. I'm asking you to help us as a different branch of government with your full support so we can stand united and help our citizens get back to all the myriad of legal issues that are coming forth from this horrific tragedy. I thank you for this opportunity to speak, and again ask for your full support. My colleagues here have some comments as well, so I would, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, pass the mic to District Judge Deborah Crooks.
Thank you. I want to thank Representative Massey for coming down and meeting with us and for arranging this as well. I want to thank the people of AOC who were immediately on site to help us in this time of tragedy. I had actually arranged to be in Lexington and drove up the day of the tornado because my grandson was going to be born in Lexington the next day, and I'd arranged for my docket to be covered the next week. Had colleagues who were going to help me out, had everybody in my jail arraigned up at that time, and was prepared to roll. And 4 hours after I reached Lexington, my hometown where I've lived my entire life was pretty much wiped out. Spent 40 minutes not knowing if I still had a husband or not, or a home. Finally talked to him and found out they were pretty much intact, but didn't have any power. He didn't realize at that point how bad things were. At 1:30, Jason Kirk with AOC called me to check on my personal safety, and I told him I was in Lexington, and he said, well, your courthouse is gone, your downtown is gone, large groups of your neighborhoods are gone, AOC is on the way. At 3:30, Sheriff Hayden called me to see if my husband was with me, and I said no, but I have talked to him. I don't think he realizes the gravity of the situation yet because everything was just dark and he went to bed. But I said, I'm going to call him here in a little bit and get him up, tell him to get the generator going. We had a generator we'd had since the ice storm. And I said, get him to see if he can come down and help out as well. Had it not been for my colleagues, my husband, my administrative assistant, and her husband, the clerk, Judge Bishop, some of my CSOs, I would have gotten nothing probably out of my office because I was out of town. And I'm very appreciative to them to risking their lives to go in there because by the time I got back to Mayfield, floors were buckling, things were still falling from the ceiling. Everything was wet, already beginning to smell horrendously. It just simply wasn't safe to be in the building. But we've made multiple trips in despite that to get things that we would think of that we knew we needed. My secretary managed to grab a handful of stationery and a box of envelopes because she knew we were going to need those and just took out what she could carry. So we've gotten out some things. AOC was very quick in getting us some facilities and drawing up that plan. We are very impressed with the plan. I required very few changes, and in fact, it was a pretty good plan with just some very minor modifications to it. But it is going to require some immediate funding. You're turning retail space into court space, and that's not easy. We're going to be the only courthouse that has its own tattoo parlor. But I guess it'll be one-stop shopping.
Next door, technically.
Our temporary office, they're going to sort of move us around within a working construction footprint, is my understanding. Our current office, in which we do share the wall, my personal office was, we were in a former church part that had been used as a church, and my actual office is a small room. My secretary and I are both in that office, and it was 4 different colors. It was turquoise, bright yellow, orange, and hot pink. And my secretary over the weekend took it upon herself to paint it about the color of this room and hang my salvage seal of justice behind my desk so I could do virtual hearings and look somewhat professional in doing so. So when I came in Monday and saw that changed my attitude quite a bit. She felt a little bad painting over the Jesus Loves Me and the handprints on the door, but we felt like we needed to make it look a little bit like a courtroom if anyone was going to take us seriously. Everything's being done virtually. Having said that, no one had been arraigned in Graves District Court since the day of the tornado until this week. So I've had people who have been in jail for 1 month that were just being arraigned. And we've tried to be somewhat generous with bonds, knowing that people were in an unusual situation. They needed to check on their families. They needed to check on their homes. I have not been very generous with the looters. If it's a case that comes in front of me and it's someone from Maine who's come down not to aid us but to take advantage of people who are left with very little, I haven't felt very merciful toward them. But everyone else, we've tried to be somewhat generous with bonds because right now we have no jail. Our jail was destroyed in this process as well, and all of our prisoners are being housed in outlying counties. One problem I'm encountering, Judge Bishop said that we are ready to go. We're ready to do things virtually. There are some snags there. There are some locations, some jails that do not do virtual hearings. Fulton County is one. They said they're available audio only. Well, if any of you are attorneys, you've ever done a preliminary hearing, a probable cause hearing, and you ask a witness to identify someone, is that the person you arrested for thus and so offense? And they say, no, I can't tell you that because they're available audio only. I cannot see them. Then you very well can't identify the person you're talking about. So there are challenges to virtual court. People don't take it seriously. You're trying to have someone understand that they are still in a court setting even though they're virtual and they're laying in bed smoking a cigarette. There's dogs barking in the background. There's children screaming in the background. It's just not good for court. And then you have people who don't have on a regular day the same type of internet or bandwidth that they need for these hearings. And now we've had a tornado that's come through and compromised a lot of our infrastructure, and we still don't have what we need. So I've done 2 arraignment sessions so far with the jails that had the most of our defendants in them, Callaway County and McCracken County. I have more scheduled later this week. But I don't know what I'm going to do about Fulton, except they might be on by phone, maybe. We need your help. We need it now. We need it yesterday, as quickly as we can get that temporary space retrofitted and set up for court. That's what we need. We need at least one courtroom as quickly as we can, even if Judge Bishop and I have to take turns with it. We need some things to be held in person and not virtual. Not everything can be done virtually. We were just starting to get caught up from COVID, and this is, I've been an attorney for 36 years, and this is my 20th year as district judge. I'm going to retire at the end of this term. That was the plan before the tornado. So a new facility is not going to benefit me at all. I'm asking for that for my colleagues and for our community. We need it. We need a temporary facility now that needs to be authorized on an emergency basis so it can be done as quickly as possible. But we need a new facility. I think that will be a sign of hope for our community. When you've got an entire downtown that's been wiped out, you know, your public buildings are the anchors for those communities. They're the ones that industry looks at. They are the ones that people come into to seek information. If they see our courthouse built back, and there's going to be a lot of land available once they get all the debris cleared, if they see our courthouse come back, I think that's going to give our community hope that maybe Mayfield and Graves County is going to come back, because that's going to be one of our anchors for our community. But, you know, there is an old saying, that justice delayed is justice denied. You know, if you are a litigant or you're a defendant with rights, you know, maybe, if you're accused of a crime, or you have a family member who's accused of a crime, you know, you're entitled to have speedy resolution of your claims, and there's going to be nothing speedily resolved in Graves County for a good while. As I said, we've been delayed by COVID, just starting to get back in the swing of things, and now this has struck. So I may have done the last jury trial of my career and not known it at the time. And I never thought I would finish my career without a courtroom, but right now I do not have one. I have a small office about the size of probably one of your bathrooms that was multicolored and has been painted beige by my secretary. And we're working with some bare bones things. So I'm hoping Judge Bishop won't be too loud when I try to do my hearings, but we're going to do the best we can, and I thank you for your time.
Help me out here, right?
Do you need me to move?
No, she can reach it.
Good afternoon. On Wednesday, December the 8th, we began hearing about the possibility of severe storms and a possible tornado threat for our area in far western Kentucky. As time progressed, the urgency in the weather forecaster's outlook on what to expect began to ramp up. On Friday, December the 10th, that whole day, I recall being mindful of the threat and found myself routinely checking the latest word on the weather outlook. At about 8 p.m., we began hearing the storms were igniting to our south, and soon thereafter learned that a tornado was on the ground in Arkansas heading northeast. As the tornado began getting closer to our county near 9 p.m., myself and other deputies headed towards the west end of Graves County near the Hickman County line. Our best guess as to the track of the tornado was that it was going to enter Graves County from Hickman County between the Dublin and Baltimore areas of our county. We were very aware that there is a rather large Amish population in this area, and that any type of weather warnings were probably not getting out to these families. We began positioning deputy sheriffs in that area as we learned that the devastation from this particular tornado was catastrophic to our south. In my mind, I was concerned about us not being able to get into that area and render aid afterwards. Once arriving in the general area, we ran the roads with lights and sirens, also utilizing the PA systems in our cruisers to alert the residents in that area of an impending tornado. At about 9:30 p.m., two deputy sheriffs were I was about 2 miles behind them when one of them advised over the radio that they had been hit. They had apparently unknowingly drove into the southern edge of the tornado as it was crossing the roadway right at one of the large concentrations of Amish farms. This is a photograph. Could you forward, Judge? Scroll through, that's 3 of them. This is one of the patrol cars that one of the deputies was in that was struck by the tornado, and you can see a large piece of lumber penetrated his rear quarter panel. All his windows were knocked out. His car actually, he was facing one direction. Once the tornado got done with him, he was facing the opposite direction. It's an absolute miracle that he wasn't injured from that. I turned around to go check on the two deputies. The closer I got, I found that the roadway was littered with trees, power lines, parts of houses, and other debris. Once reaching their location, I found that there are two sheriff patrol cars in the roadway, badly damaged with the windows knocked out and totaled. I found the two deputies about 100 yards off the roadway giving aid to a young Amish girl who had a severe laceration and an arterial bleed to her leg. Her home had been blown from its foundation. Deputies applied a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. At this time, our radio communications were non-functional due to power outages and damage to our radio towers. We found an interior door in some nearby rubble and utilized it as a backboard. We then carried her to a waiting patrol car, being as no ambulances were available. Just over the hill from this location and across the field, deputies found an Amish couple and their 2 children deceased. They lived at a sawmill that they owned and operated. Most all of these structures were destroyed. Unbeknown to us, during this exact same time, the tornado was ripping through Graves County and into the city limits of Mayfield, killing 23 persons. We have a candle factory in Mayfield that had about 100 persons working the night of the tornado. When the tornado struck this factory, there were 140 plus employees present, many of which were trapped, some 5 hours or longer before they were rescued. Unfortunately, 9 of those people were lost and did not survive. In-county and out-of-county volunteers, police, sheriff's offices, EMS personnel, fire departments swarmed to our city and county in under an hour of this tornado. There are so many heroic things that occurred and so many lives were saved as the number of injured people were well up into the hundreds, some of which to this day remain hospitalized.
This is another photo. Cruiser.
Yeah, that's a interior photo of the one of the sheriff's cruisers. At around midnight to 2 a.m., I heard that our courthouse was severely damaged. I started to make my way there, but found it nearly impossible due to the trees, power poles, and power lines and other debris covering the roads and the city streets. Go to the next one. Once arriving there, I found our historic courthouse in ruins. severely damaged, windows blown out, and generally unsecure. Measures were immediately taken to assure that the department's evidence room was secure, and then efforts made to assess the damage. I made contact with both Judge Bishop and Judge Crooks to make them aware of the condition of the courthouse, their offices, and our court records. My report to them both was not a good one. Our county jail was also damaged beyond repair, which in turn required all of our county and state inmates to be transported to out-of-county jails, some of which are more than an hour away. The issue will remain to be a huge burden for our agency, as all inmates will have to be transported back to Graves County for court proceedings and then taken back to their respective correctional facility. Much of the next few days and nights and weeks seem almost a blur. We had set up an emergency operations center that was initially staffed with emergency management officials from across the state of Kentucky. Then after a week or so, an emergency management team from New York State arrived, and then a week later they were relieved by an emergency management team from the state of Virginia. The approximate total number of structures affected in the city of Mayfield was 1,775 and 450 structures in Graves County. A few days after the tornado, we began seeing a lot of out-of-state cars arriving in our county. Many of these folks came to help us, caring for displaced residents in too many ways to mention. But then, of course, we saw some of them taking advantage of our situation. We began to notice some looting and thefts from the tornado-ravaged areas of Mayfield and Graves County. We began making multiple arrests of people stealing damaged and totaled vehicles. They were literally hundreds of cars and trucks tossed, blown, and otherwise destroyed that the scrappers were loading up on trailers and flatbed trucks to haul them out of our area to be crushed for scrap value. To extra patrol these damaged areas around the clock was beyond the ability of our local law enforcement agencies. An emergency curfew was ordered and issued in all areas of the city of Mayfield and the affected areas with tornado damage in the county. I sent out a statewide request for assistance from sheriff's offices and municipal police departments to come to Graves County to assist us with our law enforcement duties. The response was overwhelming and very humbling. Kentucky sheriffs, police chiefs, mayors, and county judge executives should be commended for coming to the aid of our county. Over the course of this event, we have received assistance, and I want to mention these agencies if I could. We have received assistance from the Callaway County Sheriff's Office, Murray Police Department, McCracken County Sheriff's Office, Paducah Police Department, Audubon Park Police Department, Louisville Metro, Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, Shelby County, Frankfort Police Department, Lawrenceburg Police Department, Southgate Police Department, Cold Spring Police Department, Covington, Anchorage, Bullitt County Sheriff's Office, Campbell County, Mason County, Boone, Florence PD, Madison County Sheriff's Office, Webster County SO, Glasgow, Hodgenville, Ballard, Carlisle, KSP, troopers from across the state, and Department of Fish and Wildlife officers. All of these agencies have been assisting us around the clock, extra patrolling the damaged areas. Due to this extra patrol and extra law enforcement assistance, we were able to give those families some extra sense of security and safety. Many of the properties affected had personal valuables scattered about these neighborhoods. In many cases, the property owners were hospitalized and some were deceased. So we were the only ones left to protect their personal properties from theft and looting. The challenges ahead for us all are significant, some known and I'm sure many are unknown. I would like to share, to wrap this up, the names of the people that we lost in Mayfield and Graves County. Yes. Robert Baldry, age 87. Rosa June Sanders, age 60. Ollie Reeves, age 80. Bobby Spradling, age 50. William Gilbert, age 44. Jamie Wagner, age 66. Kathy Green, age 77. Emma Gingrich, age 31. Daniel Gingrich, age 4. Marilyn Gingrich, age 7. Jacob Gingrich, age 31. Entire family wiped out there. Anna Cook, 6 days old. And then employees at the candle factory that lost their lives. Jill Monroe, age 52. Devin Burton, age 21. Ivan Lopez, age 51. Janine Williams, age 50. Jeff Creason, age 57. Kayla Smith, age 30. Lannis Ward, age 36. Graves County Deputy Jailer Robert Daniel, age 47. And Elijah Lewis, age 35. Thank you, sir.
I'll be brief. I think everybody's pretty much covered everything. In the clerk's office, we lost everything, all of our files. We're going to be starting from scratch, and it's going to be tough. And one of the things that I just want to ask for from you all is to consider the massive turnover that we have in the clerk's offices right now. We have a hard time keeping good employees. And I have 13 deputies right now, and 4 of them are new and don't really know much what's going on. They don't really know what they're doing, and that makes it hard when you're starting from scratch. And I would just ask you when you go to pass the new budget to remember the deputy clerks and all they do. They're dealing with people's lives. You know, it's hard to hire intelligent, trustworthy people who are able to come in and learn the job. It takes sometimes a year to 2 years to get somebody fully trained to know what they're doing in a clerk's office. And they're dealing with important matters. And right now we've been having to hire people, get them trained, they turn around and quit so that they can go work somewhere else, making a little more money with a lot less stress. And I would just ask that you give them the maximum raise that you can give them. They deserve it. They work hard. They work long hours. A lot of my girls come in on weekends, and they don't get paid extra for it. I'd also like to, again, ask for, our new facility to be built back as soon as possible. Where we're at now is great. It's functional. We have everything we need, except for, as far as the clerk's office goes, it's not real secure. We've had just random people wandering in, wanting to use our restrooms, or there's one area in our location that a homeless guy's been living in. I'm sure it's about all he could find right now, but I'd like for my girls to feel safe and have a good temporary location to work out of. And the sooner we can get that done, the better for us in Graves County. And again, the deputy clerks all over the state, I know they deserve more than they get right now. And I just ask you to remember that. And I think that would be the most helpful thing you can do for the clerk's office right now.
Thank you guys again for coming. Y'all have done a good job. Pictures, pictures worth 1,000 words. So that was the toughest part, Sheriff. I couldn't have sat there and read those names, but thank you for doing that. Has already been mentioned, House Bill 5 will be voted on the floor today. My Senator Jason House, Senate Bill 5 will be voted on today. Those will come together after session and be presented to the governor for his signature. Becomes effective immediately upon the governor's signature. Looking through the bill just now, and there's not a lot of specifics in the bill. There's $30 million, out of $200 million, there's $30 million earmarked for the schools. And then there's another $15 million earmarked for temporary housing. That leaves $155 million that's not earmarked yet. And I don't want to put words in the leadership's mouth and to our A&R chair's mouth, but obviously we will be having those conversations with them to find out what the other $155 million is for, and is it $3 million of that available for the immediate needs that's been mentioned here today. And I think I can speak for my senator that we'll do everything we can to expedite this and take care of our communities.
I want to thank you all for presenting here today. And I will say that John Cunningham, who's the county attorney, wanted to be here, but he is home trying to get his roof and his drywall secured. And he apparently was up all day yesterday. And he also had some of those heartbreaking stories. He said I think it was his mother that was in his house, in the house, and the only place that wasn't water coming through the ceiling. And while she was there, wrapped up in a blanket, two people came through the window saying they were looking for a lost child in the basement named Lucy. And which she replied, "I've lived here since 1962, and there are no basements on any of these houses, and there's certainly no child around here named Lucy." And that was immediately following the tornado. So I will let you know that we've introduced, or we're having drafted some language regarding looting, and certainly in the throes of a natural disaster, which, having seen that, you're right, pictures are pictures, but just having seen this, the broad devastation is just amazing. So I'm sure he wanted to be here, and he's regretful that he couldn't be here. And certainly we don't forget those other communities that were affected, like Bowling Green and Dawson Springs and some of those other areas as well. I mean, there are just horrific stories out there. What motivated me to bring them here was simply the fact is as legislators, we're here to govern our communities, to provide help where we can, and what greater inspiration than to help some folks that are really trying to recover from what was just so tragic. With that, if there's going to be any comments or questions, we'll certainly take those. First, we'll start with Representative Minter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I represent the city of Bowling Green. I'm so sorry for your loss. We have lost our citizens too. Our historic justice, our historic old courthouse, our new justice center, our city hall remain standing. Law enforcement, jail, all remain standing. So your struggle is not ours. But I speak for my district in saying that we stand with you, and we know you would have stood with us if the situation were reversed. You have immediate needs so that we may have justice for all, and you can count on my full support. I want to have conversations with you all and with Chief Justice Minton, my constituent, about the reform part of this. In my other life, I'm a historian, and so many records over the years have been lost to fire and flood, and they're parts of our justice system, parts of our history in the Commonwealth we cannot reconstruct. The time is obviously now to start that conversation about how we can preserve our records going forward. I'm very, very relieved for you that ServPro will be able to reconstruct so much of that. How lucky you are, how unusual that is. So thank you all for sharing your stories, and we share in that struggle in my district. And thank you to the gentleman from Graves for your wise words about how we can use this money to put it into the districts right now where people need this relief and how we can put it toward recovery and ultimately reform. Thank you.
I do have one question to the judges. You'd indicated to me that obviously you have court security officers that were impacted by this, and that there's no courts to have security over to some degree, and that they were still nonetheless working 10, 12 hours a day, just trying to help get everything up to speed. You educated me a little bit on how they're paid or reimbursed, et cetera. And you talked about maybe there's something that we might be able to do systematically to help you with that. Has AOC resolved that? Are you still working in that category? I don't know. We just want to help AOC, help you, whatever we can do to be of assistance.
Mr. Chairman, I can't answer that completely. I can tell you that I signed orders approving reimbursement for all those CSOs for all the hours that they put in, because they secured our courthouse, what remains of it, day in, day out. I have not had any reply back that request has been rejected, but certainly I think looking forward there needs to be a mechanism in place so that CSOs continue to get paid in cases of natural disasters like this where they're still needed. I've requested at our temporary facility, since right now we're just there. It's a former. It's certainly less secure, but I've requested, and the sheriff has graciously sent CSOs to be there at any time we're open, and that's what's needed immediately, and we're working out. You see us all here. We're family. Maybe not biologically, but we're family. We work together, and we do work together. And right now, we have had such an outcropping of support from judges, from other police agencies, from other clerks. I had a call yesterday from a retired judge out of Illinois. I received a letter from a judge in the Panhandle of Florida telling me that his court had been destroyed by a hurricane. He's went through something similar. He's available just to talk to me about issues. It's hard to talk to some of our neighboring judges who want to help, who haven't experienced this, because it is so overwhelming. I mean, for example, I've spent a lot of my time this week just dealing with the locksmith to try to secure what we've got. Those are not issues that judges deal with on a daily basis. But the support we have received from AOC has been phenomenal. The support we have received from everyone around Kentucky, civic organizations, Lions clubs, Rotarians, Kiwanis, they are all out trying to help us. And you don't know how much your prayers and support mean, but it means a lot to us. And I thank you greatly.
Today, our staff is working in 59 degrees in the office wearing coats because the heat doesn't work today. And we can't use space heaters because the wiring won't support it. So we need some immediate assistance. We're still just in the beginning of the winter, so we need some help.
But I do want to say that we're blessed. We're here. We can do something. We're blessed for being here. Thank you.
Thank you guys for your presentation. Also want to recognize the Chief Justice and Ms. Dudgeon have been recognized. Justice Keller's here as well. So the Court of Justice stands behind you. I'm also proud that on your list, Sheriff, that you mentioned a number of jurisdictions that I represent. Representative Decker, Shelby County, Jefferson County, Anchorage as well. I have a constituent that grew up in Graves County, lives in Anchorage, Leanne Thacker, and she's done a lot of fundraising and a lot of support efforts for her hometown, for your hometown, your home county, and so we're all behind you. We're all Graves Countyans here, so thank you.
All right, that will conclude the presentation. Certainly, some of the members may want to talk with you following this. Again, we will be hearing the only order of the day, as I understand, is House Bill 5. And so if you would like to stay around, or you can stay around, I know you have business back in your community, But certainly as it relates to you, if you would like to stay around, we invite you to do so. We thank you for being here. I know it's a somber way to end a meeting. I typically am more upbeat and positive, and I still am, because I'm encouraged by the hope that I saw when I visited Mayfield and the surrounding areas. Life does go on. Life will go on. I just pray that like many disasters, that everybody's supportive for the first few days or weeks, but then life goes back to normal, and sometimes those folks are forgotten, and we don't want you to be forgotten as Kentuckians or citizens of the Commonwealth. So we appreciate your time and service. With that, we will conclude our meeting. This meeting is adjourned.